Following on from the Save Stanton event, the fight for Pyro began in Star Citizen. With 3 factions to choose from and different types of missions available, many players joined the event in the hopes of unlocking a weapon or even ship skins. I'm Varister, and this gameplay video showcases some Fight for Pyro gameplay, supporting the Citizens for Prosperity with some cargo hauling and space combat. To keep the overall length of the video down, some of the footage, such as quantum hops, have been sped up, and those parts are clearly marked as such, but hopefully it still gives a flavour for what some of the gameplay looks like. So, saddle up, lock and load, let's begin the fight for Pyro. And in this case, the first step is to take the first mission. There is obviously a lot to choose from because this first mission you get to choose which faction you want to align with. For me, it will be the Citizens for Prosperity, so I'm going to grab the supply runs. The supply runs pretty simply involve grabbing some cargo from the Stanton Gateway in the Pyro system and delivering it to different locations. The only nuance is if the location is not currently held by your faction when the time you get there, it can be a little bit of a hot delivery. That said, there are ways around that by double checking that the location you're delivering to is a faction location, or alternatively delivering to the space stations. Step 1 is head to the Stanton Gateway. A little bit of quantum travel, which I think justifies a ×12 speed. A little unusually, you might recognise that the ship that I'm using for this is actually the new Misk Fortune. It's a salvage ship, which you might think is not a natural cargo ship, but actually, for these small deliveries, where it's 3, maybe 4 SCUs, actually the Fortune's pretty handy. It's got cargo grid on the outside, it's got a long quantum range, it's pretty easy to fly around. So step 1 is simply to wait for a hangar bay. There are a lot of people online doing Fight for Pyro at this time, and so understandably the Stanton Gateway is a little busy. But there we now have our small hangar, so we'll head in and we'll load up the cargo. Make sure that I refuel the ship whilst I'm landed. And there's actually a first haul in Pyro contract which has popped up, which involves delivering to the same place, so I may as well grab that too. Heading out the back of the Fortune, and that's just to lower the rear ramp because I've got a few different contracts here. I'll have plenty of cargo to load up, so there is some additional cargo storage on the grid on the rear ramp. Not to mention the ability to put single SCU crates on board the ship if needs be. Made the mistake of trying to move cargo before sending the freight elevator down, so I'll send that down and then try again to move the cargo across. There we go, that looks a bit better. So this is the normal kind of freight delivery gameplay. If you've done any hauling contracts in 4.0, this mission is exactly the same. I chose the Citizens for Prosperity for this reason. For me, I'm not so into the first-person combat side of things, so actually being able to do hauling in one of my ships and then do some space combat in order to complete all of the contracts was very appealing. So that's the route I decided to take. I've still got some RMC on there. We'll lift that off and store it safely on the station. I think this is one of the things about Star Citizen is you kind of end up playing for your preferences a little bit. So I quite liked that your faction choice in this Fight for Pyro, you could flex to whatever your preferences are. And in my case, first of those is the cargo hauling. Slightly awkward box, so I'll just send it down and bring it back up again. Sometimes that'll happen. Seems very quick to load up cargo in ×4 speed. Should do this more often. So I've got 4 single SCU boxes now on this rear ramp, and I'll bring them into the ship itself. It's not quite designed for this, but it works, and therefore, what is it they say? If it sits, it fits. It's kind of the... If only they made the doors ever so slightly wider. There we go. And then the last box can go on that ramp. So, I've got all of the crates I need for the 2 Reclaim Pyro missions, as well as some crates for that first haul in Pyro contract. So, good opportunity here to get a couple of different ones done. And heading to Sakharin's plot here. Interestingly, this is the second time I've been to Sakharin's plot in Pyro. First time was to film a location spotlight video, so I feel like I know the place quite well after that. Occurs to me now that that location spotlight might not yet be live on the channel at time of recording this. So, just had to depend what order I send these things out in. If you've not seen it yet, then perhaps you have that one to look forward to. There we are, depart the hangar and then make the quantum hop firstly to Pyro 5. Interesting one with Pyro 5 and Pyro 4, they're so close together that you kind of jump to Pyro 5 first in many cases and then around it and then to Pyro 4, which is the plan here. And a quick check of the mini-map to make sure that Sakharin's plot is still in Citizens for Prosperity hands. Given that that's the faction that I'm aligned with, I want to make sure I'm flying in without having to worry about all guns blazing. Hop out of Quantum at Pyro 5, let the Quantum drive cool down a little bit, and then jump around the planets. And obviously getting a little bug where Quantum drive didn't want to operate, but quickly fixed in this case. Now if I was carrying particularly high value cargo after a long jump like that one from Stanton Gateway to Pyro 5, probably come out a little bit early. That's because as soon as you're out of Quantum, you end up in that vulnerable state while the drive cools down, and if there are any nefarious characters lying in wait on the common routes, puts you at risk. But given that I'm just flying a little Fortune, it's not any of my own cargo, it felt a little unnecessary to do that. So having a quick look around to make sure there are no nefarious characters waiting for me here, and down onto the pad, and then out to unload the cargo. And immediately there's somebody coming in trying to do the same thing. It's a Cutlass Red. I'm going to assume because it's a Cutlass Red that they're a nice character. I feel like a nefarious character might be flying around in something a little bit less nice. The ramp is still down, so I need to bring up the freight elevator. Access from the side. Not the recommended way. Meanwhile, Cutlass Red is still manoeuvring the ship, so I've got a bit of time to get my cargo on. So I'll try and do that quickly so I'm not holding up the show. There we go, that's my cargo loaded. I've got some more rejigging that I'll need to do on the ship, but I'll get out of the way. There's something about Pyro that means when I'm seeing other players doing their thing, I feel like I should be getting out of the way. I don't know, perhaps I'm a little too mistrusting. Given that I'm armed only with a multi-tool, I'm not going to be able to really defend myself very well, so I'll head back to the ship. A little bit of external view to watch. Now they're in a white suit as well, so I'm guessing they're probably similar to me. More interested in avoiding action for this kind of cargo hauling trip. I'm happy with that. I'm happy to wait a moment. Watch somebody else unloading their cargo in external view. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Should have done some filming here like this. It feels like the Pyro sun is quite low in the sky. Quite picturesque. That looks like 4 SCUs. And if it's just a single Citizens for Prosperity supply run, that's probably... Yep, they're heading back to the freight elevator. So on that note, I can hop out of the chair. Trust that they're finished with whatever they're doing. And I'll continue mine. So I've still not actually done my supply run. I've only done the first cargo hauling in Pyro. Couple of crates of that. So I'll bring the freight elevator back up and I'll unload the rest of the cargo. While White Suit is back on their cutlass red and away. Yeah, we have the medical supplies, which are for the CFP supply run. So I've tried to keep the stuff that I needed for this location more accessible. So you'll see when I open the back deck, but I've got all the processed food and I've got all the medical supplies at the front, and then the things that I've got amidships on the Fortune are the things that I'll need for my next supply run. So there is a little bit of method to the madness, a little bit of planning has taken place. So I've got one more crate of the medical supplies. And then the big crate of the processed food. Let's see if I can grab it out through this. Yep, that'll do it. Nice little scene there with the planet above and the birds flying overhead. Send the cargo down. Send the lift up. And then rejig my cargo for the next run. Thankfully there is a grid on this lift at the back, so it's fairly easy to bring these agricultural supplies back and then onto that lift. And leave space for myself to depart it. There we go. So for these first contracts, needs repeating 6 times. So 6 different supply runs. I haven't shown those. I thought I'd move on to the next phase. And I choose to defend the CFP server ship. Note the payout for this, 625k for every mission. And again, there are 6 missions to do for this one. This is going to be the ship combat element. There is a ground element, but I've already mentioned that's not really my style, so I stick with the ship combat. You will notice that I've changed the ship that I'm using, however. I thought the Misc Fortune might not be the strongest choice for ship combat, so I've instead gone with the Mirai Guardian. I quite like the Mirai Guardian for something like this. It's got heavy hitting weapons and fairly beefy shields, which are a little bit forgiving, so for flying around, firing on some smaller craft, quite like this as a choice. So this is a simple type of mission. There's an MSR that's doing its thing, and your job is simply to fly in and protect it from a swarm of enemy fighters. You can knock them out pretty much one by one, and my preferred style is to engage a few with missiles on the way in so that they stop shooting the MSR and start shooting at me, and then kind of spreading the hit points pool, as it were, between my ship and that MSR while I slowly take out these enemies. And the first one is out. This is why, for me, the Mirai Guardian was my first choice, because if you can land hits on target, especially against some of the smaller craft, it's very satisfying to watch them vanish. There's something quite satisfying as well about the way that the cannons operate, is you kind of end up placing your shots, so it's not just hold down the trigger. Sometimes you've got to really aim and fire at the right moment, and that feels good when you're like holding off for a few seconds to place a shot down, and then you squeeze the trigger when it's on low health and it just vanishes. Feels like it rewards the discipline of waiting. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. One downside of the Guardian is you end up boosting an awful lot to chase the fast movers, because it is a heavy fighter. If you've got something that can run rings around you a little bit, you use a lot of boost, and your poor pilot is definitely flirting with blackout and redout quite a lot. Not really sure what this is doing here. But we'll move on to attack some other things, rather than soak up damage on... Couldn't see if it was a raft or a mole. I think it's a mole. Getting pretty desperate if you're bringing a mole to a space fight, I suppose. Or a raft for that matter. So as you can see, these space combat contracts, for doing 6 of them, for just having a group of things to take out like this, it's a pretty easy way to earn 625k. It's a good little money maker for those 6 contracts. The only downside, I suppose, is getting help. If you are needing help, is not always the easiest. The contracts aren't shareable, and you probably rely on getting help from somebody who is also of the same faction alignment as you. That's not a problem for me, because Citizens for Prosperity is obviously the morally upstanding choice of faction for this mission. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the nicest ship skins. I don't know if I think it's the worst set of ship skins, but I don't think it's the best. So naturally, I don't think many players have chosen the Citizens for Prosperity, but for me, I'm not really that into the ship skins. And this thing has taken a beating. Glad I chose it last. But there we go. That's the first one of those done. And once again, this is a mission that you do 6 times. A little bit quicker than the cargo hauling, so I think we'll show a second attempt. Or I should say a 6th attempt, the final attempt, to show what happens after you've completed all 6 of each. For those who do fly the Guardian, you'll notice I've changed the power a little bit. Full power to weapons. I've put full power to shields for this and lowered the engine power, and that's just because you end up dancing with a lot of these ships, so having that extra shield power I think seemed like a good choice at the time. And once again starting the engagement by flinging some missiles out and letting them say, hey, let's shoot this guy instead of this poor little MSR. If you see some bad aim, it's because the server performance is reduced a little bit. I'm not saying that I'm a good pilot. I'm sure some of the bad aim is down to me, but instances like that where the ship vanishes from one location and enters into another does make it a bit harder. I thought try and take out the Buck first, just because the Buccaneer's got quite a lot of firepower on it. So taking that firepower out of the equation feels like a sensible choice. Now that one looks like an Argo raft. I don't know if Argo are sponsoring some of these terrorists in Fight for Pyro. I don't know if they are terrorists. I don't know what the definition of any of these are. I'm sure the UAE would definitely call them outlaws, but don't know how much jurisdiction the UAE has out here in Pyro. Getting very close to a little blackout there. Just pushing the little Guardian a little bit through its paces. And these smaller craft are probably the larger challenge, the Razor or the M50. Just because they can, to some extent, run rings around the ship, but it doesn't really matter for PvE combat. There's a lot of looking around and trying to chase ships down. Yeah, I can see one here. Well, that's an 85X. Luxury transport snub. A little bit out of place in Pyro, I think. Perhaps it was borrowed from somebody. In case you are thinking this seems like a lot of flailing around, I don't pretend to be the best space combat pilot. I can usually get the job done against the AI, but sure, if you're thinking, hey, I could do a lot better than this, you may well be right. Chasing around an Avenger. Quite like that firepower, very quickly knocking out the ships as soon as they start landing hits on target. Poor little MSR is under attack itself. You can see on the top right it's got 91% of its health left, so it's not really falling yet. I think I did this mission 7 times, only failed once, and that was because the MSR got torpedoed, which felt a little unfair. But the actual space combat side of it was fairly straightforward. Just made sure that at least half of the ships were shooting at me instead of the MSR. This little 85X. Get back here. Rod Barrett. Proving a challenging one to knock out. There we go. Who's next? Is that another 85X? Maybe there's been a raid on a Origin factory or something. There we go. Still quite a few more ships floating around. I'm firing at very long ranges here just to try and get them to disengage from the MSR and start engaging me. Again, just I think trying to keep as much firepower off the ship I'm supposed to be protecting rather than my own. That is a little raft. I'll deal with that last because it's really not as big a threat as I think some of these fighters. This looks like a 300 series Origin. And the Avenger. So you can see there can be quite a lot of ships involved in this. I can't count how many times I've heard the target destroyed. It's a fair few. But then the payout's pretty nice. And of course the rewards for the SMG and the ship paints. Just looking at me and I can't do anything about the fact that I'm firing on it. Just takes a while to take it out. Bit of a damage sponge, I suppose. Quite like when you shoot it and you see the bits fly off it. There we go. Another one here. Goodness me. Like, maybe in lore they're here to pirate the ship or something, so they brought some cargo haulers to loot some things off it. Maybe we'll say that. And that's why there are these inappropriate ships at a raid. There we go. I just need to find whatever the last one is. There are a few half-dead ships hanging around. There it is, a Pisces. Another small one to chase around. Thankfully it's not quite as manoeuvrable as some of the other smaller ones, but still need a little bit of chasing for my part. Almost gone. There we have it. And that's contract complete, and you can see on there it's got the livery for the Carrot Cutter, Pisces and Zeus, and the Ripper SMG as well. Plus, of course, all of those tasty payouts, which are very healthy for a credit balance. So, Citizens for Prosperity, I've got your back. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to let me know I should make more similar videos, and if you're not yet subscribed, given that you've got this far, you might like to do that too, so that YouTube will know to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.